questions, and then you're going to build out a little bit of a plan. So this is not meant to be, set in stone or fully thought out. It's to get you to think about what you can implement and to go ahead and put some things on paper now while it's fresh, right? So we'll go through it in just a minute, but I do want to talk a little bit about our initiatives and kind of the NASPO side of it with academic partners, because I think it'll help you then think about what you can do and how we can help, right? So I'll go through this, and then Brandy's going to walk through the worksheet and the questions and some things there. And Brandy, feel free to jump in with this as well.
Sure.
But these are our partners, okay? So when we talk about partners or academic partners at NASPO, it is this group that we refer to. Sometimes we'll call them our tier 1 academic partners or just our partners. So why this group and how do we get there, right? And we got a few folks in this room who are members of these universities. But about 5-6 years ago, we started this initiative to start engaging with academic partners. What were we looking for? A lot of the things that we've talked about over the last couple of days: building internships, career fairs, engaging with hopefully that next workforce for public procurement, right? So that was a huge goal, the workforce side, the talent side. What else did we want? Well, we wanted to be able to connect and tap into all that expertise within the faculty, within supply chain management programs. Be able to tap into the knowledge of Dr. Wu back there and Dr. Freyer and all those great faculty, because they have expertise in supply chain management. And when we were looking at different majors, different disciplines, supply chain management, logistics, procurement, closest fit, right? That we could see out there, because I'm sure this is not going to be a shocker. Public procurement degrees, programs, almost non-existent, right? There might be 1 or 2 that we know of. Maybe there, is associate's degree or something like that, certificate, but actual bachelor's degrees, graduate level, public procurement, not really out there, right? So supply chain for us, biggest connection there was that we can make with it, and opportunities. So then we began reaching out to some of the highest ranked supply chain management programs in the country, right? So we went down the list, and we also looked regionally because we wanted to make sure we were spread out across the country with some of the universities. We began making connections with them, having face-to-face meetings. I mean, a group flew around the country going to different universities and talking about, is this something you'd be interested in? I'll be honest, some of them public procurement wasn't even on their radar, right? They hadn't thought about it, they never engaged in it. But we had partners who said, sure, we would like to partner with you. We see opportunities here. Michigan State, Oregon State, Arizona State. In the first couple of years, our partners that we signed an MOU with and began working with: Penn State, Oregon State, North Carolina State, ASU and MSU were the initial ones in the first couple of years. And then we've added GW Law and Iowa State, and Chemeketa Community College was an early one too, because they had public procurement courses they were doing, right? Within an associate's degree for a certificate, but they had courses. So we began to partner with them, and we built a lot of the programs and initiatives that we still have: the internship program, career fairs, academic forum. We did the first one in 2017, ASU. And so from there, we've been able to develop these programs and provide initiatives and things like that back to you all. So we'll talk about some of these things we do with these partners throughout, so make sure you're aware of them. But that is where we start with our academic partners and what we do. So what I want to talk about, and we'll kind of go through some of this in a minute, but those are our big partners, right? And they are big programs, and they're here, and we're engaged with them, and we do a lot of things. Now, as we go through this session, I want you to think about, what can you do with Michigan State, right? Are there things you can partner with, you can tap into, especially if it's in your region, right? Are there things you can do with Arizona State? And all of them. They are great programs. We have great relationships with them. You've got to meet them. But I also want you to think about who else you can partner with too, because in your state, there may be a supply chain management program down the street. You may not know it, right? There may not be a supply chain management program anywhere near you, but maybe there's a business, College of Business, and they have a data analytics program. Maybe it's within the government political science that you find a partner. It can be anybody, right? We've done our internship program for several years now, and our relationships with the supply chain management program within the School of Business. We've had states hire interns from just general business degrees, from pre-law, engineering, probably a government student or two. They went outside and found good students that fit their needs. Now, most of them are supply chain management, and that's where we focus a lot of our communication. But you can find those students and those relationships in other programs as well. Depends on what your need is. So I want you to start thinking about that, because I mean, we know we have pulled up most, if not all, the universities that have a supply chain management bachelor's degree, right? Like we've had a list at different times. There are more out there than you know, but they're not everywhere, right? Your state probably has one somewhere, but it's not guaranteed. So there are other programs you could connect with, though, depending on your need and depending on what's local. So start thinking about that, these universities. And stop me if you have questions. Stop me if you don't agree with something or you have a different idea. But what I will say from our side with this, right? So we have our tier 1 partners. This is who we do a lot of our initiatives with directly. But we're here to help you make connections with some of the local schools as well, in terms of being able to make that first phone call, give you some direction, those types of things. So any thoughts on this initially? In terms of connections or programs or universities that you have worked with in the past or you've looked at? Yeah, Drake.
How current is the list? I'd be interested in seeing the list of all the schools that
Yeah.
have those programs.
Yeah, we have a list. Links change all the time, but Randy, I think we can put that out, right? Or we can.
Yeah, so we've actually taken other organizations' lists of colleges and their supply chain programs and gone through and made note of what does their program look like, what types of courses do they have, and do they have anything that focuses specifically on procurement? So that's your university side. Then we decided, let's take a little bit further and let's take a look at all the community colleges where, you know, a lot of these students in supply chain are securing jobs early on, but perhaps some of these students that are in community colleges are taking courses in procurement and want to make that transition into that profession. So yeah, I mean, we've been developing those lists. We have a list on our website as well that we can share.
Great.
Yeah, right.
You guys, I know this is all like active students. One thing I'm looking into is maybe alumnus groups that maybe they're looking to get out of the private sector and come into the public. So have you guys reached out to maybe some alumnus groups that have it?
So we haven't reached out to alumni groups directly. Now, I will say, like within Handshake and with some of these other career services, you can select for job postings, things like that, to be sent out to their alumni groups if they're in there, right? And I know we have done that for different jobs, so it can go beyond different current students and be sent out to them as well. But I think it's a good idea. I mean, I don't know if others have thoughts on that in terms of reaching out to alumni and alumnus groups. Yeah, Tracy?
My thought is yes, absolutely, but I will tell you, so the best thing to do is post position, whether it's Handshake or Simplicity or any other sites. But make sure that you have in your posting on how to get a hold of you, because we have a lot of our alumni that don't want to post their resume in that system because they don't want their employer knowing that they might be looking.
Right.
So you need to make sure you provide information as to how to get a hold of you if they would be interested in something.
Yeah, Kelly.
So I don't know Penn State or any others, but following off and pivoting off that, every year that we have our graduating class, so seniors, MBAs, supply chain concentration. We've also got MS in supply chain. We invite them to join a closed LinkedIn group, and some do, some don't. But I mean, and maybe you have something like this, Tracy, I don't know. And all you have to do is send me a link, a confidential link, and whatever, and how to apply, and a job description, and within 24 hours, it's out there. And it's between you and the person. If they contact you, I mean, the university has no involvement. I frankly was surprised when I got to Michigan State from my career that we don't really do a lot for alumni, because we've got 50,000 students we're trying to help who are currently here. So I'm sure that most colleges and universities have something they can help you out with to connect with the right people.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that's a really good point. I mean, I'll give you an example, Brian, of what I've done with NASPO, right? So I graduated my MPA program, Eastern Kentucky University, which is near Lexington, where NASPO headquarters is. When we started having a lot of positions open up a few years ago, positions that could be filled by somebody straight out of grad school or with 1 or 2 years of experience. I connected with my previous department chair and just started sending those to her. And she would put it on their Facebook group. She put it on LinkedIn. She would send out emails to alumni and graduating students. I've hired 4 at least from that program over the last few years. It was that easy, right? It's just great candidates started coming in, whereas other candidates, I mean, they didn't have the background I was looking for. So those connections of zeroing in with programs and sending that out to them, it took me, 15, 20 minutes to do that. And I got immediate better candidates that were actually interested in nonprofit and government and had a background with internships in it, made all the difference. And we hired those people. Has anyone else done that? I mean, you've put positions out to groups like that or universities or contacts directly. I know you have, and I know you're going to talk about it, what you all have done, but I mean, others in terms of have you done it? Think about it, right? I mean, honestly, and maybe you don't have those connections yet, and that's what we're going to talk about. How do you build those connections? Because, for me, it was easy. I knew the person, I had their email. But you can also build those connections so that you are sharing those opportunities with them. And, that's part of what we do when we're engaging with our partners. And you heard the students yesterday, NASPO needs to have some brand awareness on the campus, right? Because all these other companies do. And we've always heard from Kelly and Tracy and Steve, I mean, companies come on here, students know who they are and they want to talk to them. You heard the students say that. We're trying to build that with our tier 1 partners, that group I showed you. I want you all to build that with your local universities if you can, right? I mean, look at the university, what they have to offer, how feasible it is, start to build that relationship, but you could be that partner with them. They could be that partner for you. And so think about what you can do, which is what we have up here, just some ideas, things we've done, things you could do. Career fairs, that easy, right? Brandy, you want to talk about kind of what we do with career fairs with our partners and bringing in members and things like that?
Yeah, sure. So all of our academic partners, aside from Chemeketa and GW Law, they host career fairs. I'm pretty sure OSU does career fairs every quarter. And then, of course, our other academic partners do them every semester when they're on their semester system. So what we like to do is we like to spread out our career fairs throughout the year. That way we can be sure that we're hitting all of our academic partners. Of course, with COVID and everything, a lot of them have been virtual, but now we're transitioning to being in person, which is perfect. So with those dates, we select which ones we're going to for the spring, fall, winter quarter. And then with that, we like to go ahead and invite our state members within that region to come and attend with us. And the nice thing about that is NASPO takes care of that registration fee, or as a corporate sponsor of PSU, that's already covered with us. And then we bring the table setup, we bring the pop-up banners, we bring the swag, and then you as state members, we fly you out, join with us, bring all your swag. And then from that point, we start to promote our internships that are happening during the summer with the NASPO internship program. And then you as state members get to promote any internship programs that you have, or any interns that you want to invite into your office, or just get that conversation going, face-to-face connection with students on what is public procurement and what type of careers can you go into, and then does your office have any positions coming down the pipeline that are available for those students. So that's where you can really connect with us in that respect. We're always posting them in the members community through the NASPO network of those upcoming career fairs that are happening. But touching on career fairs as well, something that I do want to point out is if you're making a local connection with a university or even a community college, I guarantee you they have a career services department and a contact that wants to work directly with companies and bring them to campus. The nice thing about here is we have the Seminole College of Business. So they do their own separate supply chain career fair program. So you're meeting specifically with those supply chain students that hopefully have a little bit of background knowledge of procurement. Otherwise, branch out, right? So Arizona State University, when our state of Arizona employees came and talked to you, the great thing about them is they already had that connection with ASU. But Jill told us, I branched out to general business majors. She branched out to anybody in public policy, government law. So those are things to be considering. We've talked so much with members who say, well, I don't have a supply chain program around me. That's okay. You know, general business majors, they might be interested in public procurement as well. And then the next key point from that is building a relationship with professors. That's where it's key, because we get asked quite a bit with building relationships with professors to do presentations. We invite state members to do those presentations with us as well, because it's always helpful for me to have somebody who's a public procurement professional and expert and can talk about those situations and scenarios that students have questions about. That can be virtual or in person as well. A lot of these schools are super flexible about having that conversation because they want their students to have that exposure. Okay, so as you can see on the board, being that guest speaker and just being in front of those students, you never know who you're going to connect with. Meeting with those high school students yesterday, one or two of them kept asking so many questions about public procurement. In my mind, I'm thinking, great, that's one or two students right there that could possibly go into this profession someday, or possibly even more. So just really encouraging you to, you know, whether it's with our academic partners and connecting with these faculty or faculty members at other institutions, get that conversation going, because they're a lot more interested in getting people in front of their students than we realize.
So any questions right now? Thoughts, questions? About what we're saying? All right, I want to make sure you heard this. We will pay for you to go to a career fair, right?
When I say fly you out, just like this, we will fly you out to come
We
with
will do
us.
it. Yeah, honestly, I mean, and we do it by region first, because that makes most sense. But other times if there are no takers within the region, we'll open it up. And we've done this for several years. I mean, we've had folks from DC come down to North Carolina. We've had Ohio go to Penn State, Michigan State, Arizona, Idaho, go to ASU, et cetera. So we will do that. We will bring you there and we will set up the booth for you, and we'll be right there to help you with the questions and all of that. And you get to engage with students, and you get to tell them if you got open positions, internships, et cetera. Yes.
So would you be willing to assist in one of the other schools that has a supply chain program that isn't on this list?
So good question, right? So go back to what I was talking about, like tier 1 partners and everything. So tier 1s, we've got an MOU in place with them, right? So we're making a commitment, includes a budget commitment on certain things, scholarships that we do, you know, providing the internships to you all for students that are from these partners. So it's a very formal agreement. That is what we only do that with the tier 1 partners that are up there. And getting to be a tier 1 true MOU partner, we have a process that's set in policy of, we have to talk to them about their needs. We have to see what their program has to offer. We have to get approval. We have to go through a full process. But for others, and to this point of the initiatives you want to make, how can we help you? If it's easy for you, we will make that first connection. If you say to me, hey, I want to connect with whoever, a university, they do have a supply chain management program, or they have political science program, but I think this would be a good connection. I don't know who to reach out to. I don't know how to get this going. Brandy and I will do that outreach. We'll send the email and just say, hey, we're with NASPO. We have members, state of Tennessee, and they would love to talk to you about how you could build a partnership that could include possibly student projects, internships, guest speakers, things like that. And we'll get on that first phone call with you. And what we want to do is then hand it off to you, right? But we can do that. Other things we could do, and I think we've got another slide where we talk through some of those extra resources, but we've got resources we can provide them as well, because what we're talking about here right now is heavily focused on like the career services side, right? The connection within internships. But what we are also trying to do, and we're doing this with our partners, we want public procurement curriculum to get into their major, and we're doing it. We've done it. We want courses on public procurement to be part of supply chain management. So that is something we can provide resources around too. So I guess what I would say, you know, with that, even if they are not one of our partners with an MOU in place, there are things we can do to help and support, right? Resources in that regard, whereas it may not go as far to be as having an MOU in place and we're giving them scholarship money or things like that.
Is the intern program intern money only for those top tier?
It is. So our internship program is only for students that are from our top tier universities. Now, what I'll say is that every state has professional development funds, right? That come from NASPO. We changed the policy a couple years ago. You can use that for interns. So that is there. And I know those funds get pulled in a lot of different directions, but they can be used for interns. So that's another option that's there as well. But yes, when it comes to the formal internship program where we give that grant money, that is open to students from our partner universities, and that's part of our MOU that we put in place. Right? Other questions right now? Any of these things? Sorry, I went back to you all, and I keep forgetting you're up here, so stop me.
Hey, Matt,
Yes, Kelly.
can I real quick, just for the state of Michigan, they started guest lecturing for us a lot. They did a really nice job. It pivoted into the point where the state of Michigan now teaches a 1 credit course. And, you know, they're not on their own. We've got faculty with them to help with the structure and everything like that. So I'm not saying you have to somehow figure out a way to teach a 1 credit course. You never can tell where the path is going to take you. And so Jared and the team from the state of Michigan, they're not teaching 12 credits on public procurement. They're talking about deep contracting law and design with the contracts and contract management, things like that. The examples they're offering are public procurement. So without saying public procurement, they're reinforcing and taking some, and you know, I'm in all those classes with them and just keep their eyes open, but it's probably had problems before. So like I said, you never can tell.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. So I'll expand on what Kelly said. So the way that came about, the 1 credit hour course, Jared had been doing some guest speaking. We were on the supplier council calls, with Michigan State, and then we heard about this opportunity for 1 credit hour course in the fall, and I immediately get an email from Jared Ambrosier, CPO for Michigan, who says, "Hey, would you guys want to team up my office and do this?" And we said, "Sure." And so his team put together a lot of content. We provided case studies and content for it, put together a 1 contact hour course on contracting, including negotiations within it. They did a negotiation scenario, all these things. He ran it with one of his staff members. I think it went really well. From what we've heard, students were engaged. It was a great opportunity for them. Those are opportunities too. And back to, we can support that stuff as well. We've got whole textbook. We've got all kinds of resources from a content perspective that we are happy to provide. I think we'll touch on that a little bit more when we talk about other resources. We've talked about internships a lot. You know, we kind of separate internships versus student projects here. We talked about student projects a little bit yesterday, that, you know, it may be a more focused project, maybe a project that a student needs to complete as part of a course. It can take a few different forms with what that project looks like. But what I would say here to you all is, if you have that project that's been sitting on your desk and you can't get to it, and I'm not talking about, you know, kind of the very mundane or work of just cleaning up a spreadsheet, but a true project that maybe you just don't have the ability to dedicate resources towards it, that could be a perfect project for a student, graduate student, undergrad, as part of their course. And I know in a lot of cases with our partners here, we, you know, they often have a faculty member who's supporting those projects as well, or there for the student to ask questions to. But those are a good opportunity. We've had success with that. Student from MSU, Courtney, did a project 2 years ago with Michigan State, or with the state of Michigan, and lasted, I want to say, probably 2 months, Kelly, something like that, month and a half, 2 months over the summer. And she focused in on office supplies and looking at previous contracts there, and then working towards developing negotiation points around recommendations for negotiating office supplies contracts, I think is what it ended up being. Put together a full report on it, had a presentation too that we got to see. And so things like that, those are a great opportunity for them. And what I have heard many times when we've had interns do internships with states is that the state's got a lot out of it too, not just from having someone who can do a project, but as you guys saw, these students are impressive, right? Like they have expert, you know, they're learning things and they're getting exposure to topics and areas that maybe the majority of your workforce does not have, right? Certain areas, data analytics, logistics, other areas as well. Tap into that, bring that expertise in, throw ideas, issues, problems, projects out to them and see what they can do with it. Because we've had some amazing stories of where students have taken projects, they, within their internship, and just run with it and put out reports and great recommendations that the state has used, they have adopted, and they've utilized. So there's good opportunities there as well. Yeah, Lois.
So do you have like a list of like student projects or what they're writing?
Like project ideas?
Yeah, do you, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, that would be a good person to contact. We have something like looking.
I think we could. I know a few, like I definitely have a few from MSU. I mean, Steve, Tracy, I know you all have, you do lots of student projects and ideas there. We have one that we're actually doing with Penn State student right now. So we can put together like a list of ideas. And it's going to differ from university to university, from course to course in terms of exactly how big of a project can be, those types of things. But we can give you some ideas. Yeah. Put that together.
Sorry, can I?
Yeah, Kelly.
So, and maybe Penn State does something similar. We call these micro internships, which are where you can like get a job 10 to 20 hours a week, whatever it is, during the normal academic year. Get it posted, get it put in the handshake. Send it to me. I will broadcast. I will do whatever I can to make sure. And those are really nice little projects, and they're meaningful for you. They got to have some level of payback, and it's great for the students. Again, I don't know what the other universities have, but something to think about, and we'd like to help you out. And we're in East Lansing. We're in State College or Vales or whatever. You can set this up for remote, and something like that. So keep that in mind. The other thing I advise, and you got any other input, is just make sure it's crafted towards their academic level. Like if you want freshmen, they won't be able to do what you do for them. But to keep that in mind, and that way it's not an academic. It's a project that is paid. They put on the rest of the
So we do roughly 60 student research projects a year involving about 100 students. 3 times a year, twice a year, we do a call for projects. It goes out to the sponsor base, so that will go directly to NASPO. Any of our corporate sponsors can submit up to 3 projects for consideration. We have 5 vehicles that we use, and I mentioned 3. I'm talking about the undergraduate and graduate ones here specifically. Sometimes we do collaborative projects that are multidisciplinary. We usually do those through the Learning Factory, which is part of our engineering college. I don't think NASPO's ever done any of those. Those are teams of students. Our other teams of students be done through our what we call Nittany Light Consulting Group, or our Apex Projects Applied Experiential Learning. Those are also teams of students. They're not just supply chain students. The bulk of our projects are supply chain students. They're done through 2 vehicles, well, 3. Schreier's honors thesis, I think you may have met some of the students, are Sapphire students. And then our general student population, which would either be part of an honors course or part of a course that they can sign up for, which is called Independent Study Student Research. All the students are vetted, none of them are paid. It's all done for grades, part of our teaching mission. They're either done over the course of a semester or the course of an academic year. It's all upper class persons. We don't do projects that I recall, except Tracy does a couple projects with high school kids. But we don't do any projects with the underclass persons because they don't have any content knowledge. That's the way we do it. We also have a separate program, which is part of our PhD candidate program. Much smaller group of candidates, right? We have a dozen PhD candidates. They will typically be assigned a single project, and that project usually takes 18 to 24 months, right? Those are highly selected. All of our student projects are all faculty supervised. They all have a faculty advisor. They all do it for a grade. And I always put the caveat in there and say, well, they're not always an A, but most of them are. Because these students are handpicked, right? You can't just sign up for a course and do a student research project. The last thing I'll say, the critical factor in success it's typically not the faculty member, it's typically not the college, it's typically not the student. It's does the organization that's sponsoring the project provide the necessary data and resources on their end, and a champion or sponsor who is engaged with the student. The biggest point of failure that we see is when company organizations submit a project, the project gets vetted, it gets approved, and then the student who's on a clock, right, they're on an academic clock, can't get access to the data they need or can't get in touch with the executive sponsor. We've had occasional projects where we've had to discontinue the project simply because it fell down on the other end. It's very rare. In the 8 years I've been here, I only recall 1 or 2 projects. Remember, I said we 60 a year, so I'm talking about 500 examples where the student did not complete the project adequately for an A grade or close to an A grade. So if that helps.
Right. Thank you, Steve. All right, Zelinski. All right, so we wanted him to talk a little bit about the relationship that state of Louisiana has been able to make with a university that is not one of our tier 1 partners.
Good morning. So I am Zelinski Matthew, Assistant Director for the Louisiana Office of State Procurement. Our partnership was created by an idea of wanting to have some type of pipeline of successful candidates to fill our various positions. And so in doing so, in the interview process, our previous CPO and director interviewed this one particular candidate, and he was hired and realized he had a supply chain degree from Southeastern Louisiana University, which is about 45 minutes away from our office. So once he got on, we allowed him to, kind of explain the program and then connect us with the right people at the university. Immediately, once we contacted the professor over the department, they were just ecstatic. As mentioned between yesterday and today, public procurement isn't widely known by a lot of the students at the university. So they were just ecstatic about getting us into classes and discussing what we do and discussing that it is a viable option for their career path. And so the initial phase was several of our employees got together and we had meetings at the university. We spoke with several of the classes to kind of give them an understanding of what we do and what's available to them as well. We did some one-on-ones with some of the students, just trying to see like, what are they interested in? What would they like to hear from us? What would they like to learn regarding public procurement? And it quickly went from us having a desire to partner with them for our pipeline to them really wanting to partner with us because they were so interested and glad that the state reached out and wanted to explain how public procurement works and things like that. So I actually have our program started about roughly about 5 years ago, and I actually have the notes that were compiled from the initial gatherings. So we put together a plan to try to figure out the best way to go about coming up with the program. So we created a vision, which was to maintain a mutual partnership between OSP and the university and their supply chain management department to promote public procurement profession and assist students successfully transitioning from higher ed to the workforce. Some of the framing questions that we proposed were, how can our agency partner with the university and maintain or obtain mutual success? What does the university want to get out of this endeavor? What do we want to get out of the endeavor? How can we identify value to help all parties realize its full potential of the partnership? And how can we, as an agency, get the most bang for our buck, basically? So the 3 big goals of the project, the internship program, was to maintain a meaningful program. We don't, all of our interns come in and they're treated as full-time employees. They're required to take the same trainings, do basically all professional level work. So I do like to make it clear, we had a conversation yesterday where one of the states, I think it was Arizona, we're discussing internships versus student workers. And so they were like, well, what would you think the difference is? Well, internship would be someone who is obviously in college, preferably a senior, and specifically in the supply chain management program. So the difference between that and our student workers, we have high school level student workers as well as college. But they are in a role of just kind of helping and assisting with anything in the office. So typically, either our executive staff officer or one of the admins would be over the student worker. And they would be the ones doing filing, making copies and things like that. Interns will do meaningful work. So no one's authorized to get the intern to do anything but myself. So, you know, if there's various tasks that the teams would like the interns to do, which is fine, but we'll discuss it, like, yeah, they can learn from this. And that's basically the differential between a student worker and an actual intern. And like I said, we treat them as, you know, normal full-time employees, give them that experience of being in the real world. My next goal was to basically try and develop a class involving public procurement, which prior to the pandemic was, you know, on the right path to kind of getting something started. And then, of course, you know, things kind of were halted. So we're hoping to get that back together. The professors at the university were very much interested in some type of gaining some type of class where they can put it on a schedule to spread the information. The task that the interns or tasked with doing, there's 3 or 4 basic objectives. And it was kind of mentioned earlier about projects. One of the major projects that they undertake is we compile data from our P-card purchases. And so obviously those purchases could be stuff that's not on contract, stuff that may be on contract, certain vendors. So we gather all this information and they're tasked with organizing the data, making like different charts and listings of what's purchased, what vendors. And so we take that information and are able to say, oh, is this on contract? Well, if it was, why didn't they utilize the contract? Or if it's not on contract, do we need to, you know, start negotiating a contract for this? So it's one of the major projects that usually last the duration of their time with the office. The next thing would be obviously job shadowing. They would shadow current analysts from the beginning of the solicitation all the way to the end. They would also assist in public bid openings, doing bid tabulations. Actually, more recently, the current intern I have is, he was actually working on when we get legislation regarding any kind of procurement changes, we'd have them, you know, kind of watch the bill as it goes through, make a summary of what he thinks happened when it's heard. And they really enjoyed that, just to kind of get that level of, okay, more involved in the public procurement side. And so after compiling the entire proposal to start the internship program, we were able to put a plan together, send it up to our commissioner's office, and they were like 100% for it, very supportive. The criteria currently for our program is a graduating senior within the next 2 semesters and be in supply chain management. But listening to several other states, I think it'd be a good idea to, and that's for the internship program, but we've hired analysts and specialists from all aspects of, you know, any type of degree, basically on soft skills, like we said, you know, we can teach people processes, but like personality and willingness and want to is something that cannot be taught, and if so, it's very difficult. So, so we've hired multiple disciplines, and I mean, we've had great success, but I can attest that the most successful, recently, the most successful analysts, like straight off the street, no direct experience, have been those in supply chain, because they kind of have an understanding of general terms and concepts, but it's very easy for them to kind of, you know, get into the public side and learn all the processes along with it. So for the most part, that's how our program got started. I'm definitely thankful that I came and learned so much from different states, how everyone handles their programs, and I'll definitely be reaching out to, you know, kind of beef fires up and, you know, provide more learning opportunities. Another thing that was mentioned was Procurement U for the student membership. We definitely take advantage of that. That's, you know, one of the things that we try to get them to sign up and take as many courses as they can so they can get more familiar with it. As well as any of the courses that we require our full-time employees, they're obligated to do that as well. But yeah, that's basically the gist of how our program started and all the aspects of it. If you have any questions, yeah.
How many interns do you usually run at once, and what's the length of the internship generally?
Usually we'll try to have two. And we try to stagger it to where we'll have one, let's say it starts in the fall, they'll graduate in May, and one will graduate in December, then we'll start another one in spring, so that the one that's there can kind of, you know, show the ropes to the new person and pick up the project if it's not completed, that type of thing. So typically, two, we have had in the past, we had three, just because sometimes you get candidates that you really, you know, don't want to pass up on, when they have an opportunity to introduce them to what we do and potentially keep them on as employees. Also, the last probably 6 or 7 interns we had are still currently working in full-time roles in our office. And communication, as far as with the university, we try to regularly, you know, let them know how the interns are doing. We'll send out, outside of interns, when we have job postings, we'll send out emails to our contacts at the university with description, and they'll refer some of their students that are graduating to the posting to apply. A lot of times the professor will just randomly send us, you know, oh, speaking with this person, they may be interested in employment, they may be interested in internship. They'll just, without us asking, they'll send, you know, resumes or names by us for us to reach out to. Yes.
Is your internship co-curricular? Are the students taking classes at the same time they're working?
Yes, they are. So another requirement is that they're able to work about between 20 and 28 hours or less. And we work around their schedule. Last semester had somebody doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, another person did 5 days a week, half days. But yeah, we real flexible as far as working around the schedule, and it is a paid internship. Although prior to me taking over the position, we have had a couple of our interns that receive course credit for it as well, which requires, you know, obviously more communication and stuff with the actual professor and making sure they meet their benchmarks and the requirements for the class. But it has happened prior to me taking over as well.
All right, thank you, Zelensky.
Thanks.
One person want to share real quick what you came up with, walk us through real quick. Who's got one? Be brave. It's the end of the day. Derek, who's got? Brian, you're looking at it.
Oh, here you go. Let's use this for our Zoomies.
So our internal affairs group at the comptroller's office does a project with UT every year. So where they bring on interns to come work on a project for 2 to 3 months, and it goes towards their class, kind of similar to what Steve was talking about. So we don't have that in our statewide procurement division. So I think that's something we can develop and do something similar to them, as long that the internal affairs guys are doing.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you got a model, right? A
Yeah.
model that you can kind of build it off of, and you also, you know, having that to model it off of probably makes it a little bit easier for you to make the case of why procurement needs to do it,
Right.
right? Which I think is great. Okay, others, you have some project ideas, things to do? Okay, so we're about out of time. What I will say is a couple things. Here are some of the resources that we have. We've talked through most of these. What Brandy and I just talked about is we're going to send an email out to all of you in the next few days, and we're going to have links and attachments to all these things, some of the other things we've talked about. We're going to send it to you in one place, okay? To make it easier with some of these resources we keep coming back to, so you have them. But what I will say, just kind of wrapping up, we're here to help, right? Brandy talks to academics daily. She engages with them. She, you know, knows what's going on with our partners. She has a good feel for what's out there with other universities. We are here to help you. We can hop on those initial calls. We can point you towards certain universities. We can help you think about ideas for student projects, you know, how you can use them. In addition to all the work we do with our partners, we have had our own interns that work in the NASPO office, that work remotely, Rebecca's team has had interns, what, last year, year and a half?
We had one from MSU, she was fantastic, that was the summer of 2020, because her in-person internship fell through, right? So we took her on virtually, and then we hired a Penn State student, May of last year for the summer, and we kept him for the fall, and then he had to graduate in the summer instead, so we kept him on. So yeah, it's been fantastic.
And he was here, Brendan, that you may have met, outstanding. Not a supply chain student either, but is interested in procurement now because we've shoved him into it, and had all these skills and knowledge, right? So we can help with it, is what I'd like to say. And so you all have been great. I think there's been great ideas. There's been a lot.